So we are here with Professor Renira Rampazzo Gambarato. We are very happy to be here with you. It's a kind visit you're offering to us. And I would like, first of all, to ask you to introduce yourself, to explain us your affiliation, what are you doing at this moment, and especially to talk about your speciality, your main subject, which is transmedia and all the research related with this. So please, Professor Renira, whenever you want.
So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. The first time that I am participating in a doctoral defense here at Pompeu Fabra University. So it is very nice to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about transmedia storytelling, my area of expertise. So I am associate professor in media and communication, and I work at Jönköping University in Sweden. And there, our department is very much so focused on sustainable communication and all the ramifications coming out of it. And my research is foremost concentrated on transmedia storytelling, but applied to several different kinds of objects of study. So, for example, at the moment, I am concentrated on streaming media, especially working with series. So this year we published a study related to Chernobyl, the HBO series. Now we are writing another article on The Crown, the Netflix series. So, but let's talk a little bit more about transmedia storytelling.
Awesome, fantastic. I think transmedia storytelling is quite a popular term right now, obviously among the community of scholars related with media and communication, but there's still some people who are listening to talk about transmedia storytelling, but are not that familiar with the notion of transmedia storytelling. What does it mean from your point of view? What is transmedia storytelling in a very brief description?
So actually it's a very good question, because there are different approaches to it, but in a very concise form, I normally describe transmedia storytelling based on three core elements. So one is the expansion of content, so the content that is not just repeated and reproduced in different media platforms, but the content that is expanded, that is developed further, and then it is presented to the audiences via different media platforms. So content expansion. So the other main aspect is the multiple media platforms involved. So it's not just one medium, but a set of different media platforms that can then collaborate together, also involving the audience engagement, which is the third core aspect. So audience engagement. Engagement is, again, a term that is used a lot, but sometimes we don't know exactly what it means. But we use audience engagement as an umbrella term to relate to what the audience can actually contribute and how they can interact, or if they have the opportunity to actually participate and be part of the stories being produced.
In many occasions, you have said that transmedia storytelling is not that fashionable term, but quite old term, a term that is existing before the moment where we had the branch of storytelling, or the name, the label, sorry, of storytelling. And then you mentioned Henry Jenkins, the labeling of the term. So you do all this path until the present moment. But how the term has changed from this moment where Henry Jenkins says, this is transmedia storytelling, this is the way that it is working, and this moment where the new platforms are offering new opportunities for transmedia storytelling. What are the difference between these two moments?
So, Henry Jenkins was actually the one who coined the term transmedia storytelling. And this happened in 2003 when he published an article first, and then in 2006 the Convergence Culture book, where he really developed better the concept of what he was calling transmedia storytelling. However, we have before that the word transmedia being used in different ways. For example, by his colleague Marcia Kinder in the US in the 90s, already talking about transmedia supersystems. But we can go even back to the 70s, when we already have moments where the word transmedia alone starts to appear. But today, what has changed, although it's a very period of time, so if we are talking about Jenkins in 2003, so we are still less than 20 years that the term itself was coined. However, we can already see a lot of development of the concept itself. So, for example, a few years ago, in 2018, we launched a book, a companion about Transmedia Studies, so the Routledge Companion to Transmedia Studies. Matthew Freeman and I were the editors of this book, and then we asked Henry Jenkins to write the foreword for the book, because then we had this huge, like encyclopedic book with 50 chapters, each chapter talking about a different aspect of transmedia storytelling. So, for example, transmedia politics, transmedia education, transmedia psychology, so several different aspects. And then Jenkins, when he wrote the foreword for the book, he mentioned, look, I myself am surprised how this, as a field of studies, transmedia studies, how this evolved. Because when basically the main difference is that when Jenkins was discussing this and proposed the term transmedia storytelling, he was talking about fiction, because that's what he was studying, and he was already famous for all his studies on fandom, for example. So he was mainly focused on fictional stories. But now we have transmedia being applied as a strategy, being applied to so many different kinds of stories. For example, activism. So we have so many examples of initiatives about social change, about activism, about politics, that are using hashtags that then become street rallies or manifestations, then are spread across social media, and then are really making an impact, for example. So I think that the main development is this, is how much broader transmedia storytelling is now, and not just fictional stories are related to it, but a lot of non-fictional projects and ideas and stories that are related to it, and are having very concrete impact socially. So I think that that's a good way to see how things evolved.
I think it's undeniable that all these movements, especially in the last era with the collective intelligence, collective empowerment, sometimes this, I would say, groupal engagement has been favored by transmedia storytelling. But at the same time, you have spoken about the idea of streaming, and I would like you to explain further this concept, to expand on your definition of the concept, and I would like you to link this with transmedia storytelling and all this movement around transmedia storytelling, especially beyond the fiction or beyond narratives. Sometimes we have narratives. Henry Jenkins does that as well. He talks about narratives applied to reality shows, for example, but he's talking about narratives. I would like to have this definition from you about streaming and how it affects to what is not narrative, what is beyond that.
So maybe one interesting example is a fictional one, The Handmaid's Tale,
yeah,
that actually, for many reasons, became, because of the Hulu platform, became such an important element that expanded not just the fictional story, but actually penetrated society in terms of activism and social change. So how this happened? So first of all, we have the famous book from Margaret Atwood, so the Canadian writer, who wrote the book in 1985. And the book is a classic and very, very successful. But then in 2016, Hulu, the streaming service, started then developing the TV series The Handmaid's Tale. And the first season was basically an adaptation of the book. So the content of Margaret Atwood's book was then adapted for the first season. But then this was, so when they were filming and producing, it was the moment of the elections in the US. The election that Donald Trump won in the end of 2016. And then when the series actually premiered in the beginning of 2017, so the world was different, basically, because nobody could ever predict or imagine that Donald Trump would win the election. And then already in his first month in the presidency, he started coming up with very controversial and very conservative new guidelines and policies. And then when in the middle of the spring, when the show premiered, so then it became very iconic, because it was, hey, look, wait a minute, this is fiction, but it seems that we are living in it. No? So a very conservative government imposing a series of restrictions, especially for women. And then there were all the costumes, the very powerful images of the handmaids in red. And then we started seeing already in the first season women dressing as handmaids and then going on the streets to protest, especially against new restrictions in the US in relation to abortion, and also in other countries such as Argentina that was fighting to legalize abortion. So then we started seeing so many manifestations all over the world, basically, with especially women using all the iconic elements from the series to actually fight for some sort of change. And then the series was excellently done, and it was a fantastic production, which contributed for the success. But it was really that moment, the political moment, and all that the fictional story could actually relate to reality, that enable The Handmaid's Tale, the series, to be so successful. And then they decided to have a second season. But all that, the content from the book was already included in season 1. So season 1 ends at the same moment as the book ends. So then we start really having the transmediality process going on, because they wanted to continue the series, but there was no book anymore. So they had to really develop the story and then to expand the content and stay inside the story world of The Handmaid's Tale, but actually coming up with very new developments. And then they had season 2, and then they had season 3, and then they had season 4, and we will have next year season 5. And then meanwhile, Margaret Atwood, so the author, then launches a second book, The Testament, which is picking up the story 15 years later.
Yeah.
And then, and we don't know how this will end up narratively being done, because we don't know if the series will get to the point of the second book, The Testament, or not. But still, it's a very emblematic story that penetrated life. And then in 2020, when we had the elections again in the US, so The Handmaid's Tale was again very much so being used as an element to inspire people to vote and then to change. And then, so Trump lost the elections. But in terms of audience engagement, so we have not just all these manifestations, but we have different kinds of things, so different hashtags that were being created related to the series that had an impact also for the second election, so when Trump was again candidate. We had a series of memes and imageries that the audience was creating these themselves that also expanded not just the success of the series itself, but this message of resistance, of we can be powerful if we are united, we can fight, etc., etc. So hopefully it was an interesting example.
It is an interesting example. I think it's the perfect way to explain this interaction or intersection more than interaction of what you have said before. Let's say transmedia storytelling started as a fiction or narrative, then it moved to another field, the field of reality or the field of current affairs, to say something, and now fiction and current affairs strictly dialogue. So this intersection is absolutely relevant here. And I would say that transmedia storytelling is also interesting through fiction to understand some precedent, some previous events that sometimes series reflect. You have spoken about The Crown, and I think The Crown offers the possibility of rethinking some moments of the history, not just of the UK, but also the European history, also the history or the relations between the USA and the UK. And it allows at the same time to use some material of archive that sometimes people is wishing to watch again because of the series. So it gives a second life to all that. I think there is a renewal of the concept of nostalgia that some authors have raised in the last years, especially Frederick Jameson, for example. He has spoken a lot about that. And I would like to know, how do you see this, not that this series about the past we were talking about, but the series about the future, and how the future dialogues with eventual situations of the next years through fiction, and how transmedia storytelling helps to conceive new scenarios of life, this field that has been called design fiction, how fiction can help the future to be a better place to live. I don't know, what's your opinion about that?
So I think we can start with the dystopian stories such as The Handmaid's Tale, but we have others as well that are looking into the future, but with a pinch of salt, in the sense of, wait a minute, look, we have to be careful, because otherwise things can go wrong. So, for example, the Black Mirror series is excellent in this sense, because they are talking about all the technologies and thinking further how technology, different kinds of technology will advance, and how this will affect our lives. And but with a certain aspect of reminding us, look, okay, great, all the developments, but we have to be attentive, otherwise we can lose some of the developments that we already have. But what I think that is interesting is that we have the most interesting contemporary stories that are looking to the future. They are actually having some elements from the past included in it. So The Handmaid's Tale, when in 1985, when Margaret Atwood wrote the story, she had a rule. A rule was, okay, so this is a fiction, so this is a dystopian story. We'll talk about the future, but not so positively. However, she had the rule that everything that she included to compose this story world was based on something that actually already happened in the world. Many years before, or closer to the decades when she was writing it. And then now we see how actually contemporary it is, because all this oppression, all the problems with theocratic governments, etc., etc. So how this is actually very present today. Or we could mention the huge success of Squid Game, the new Korean hit series from Netflix, that is also imagining how things are evolving in terms of inequalities and all social problems, or the future of work, etc., etc. But it is, so the whole argument of the story is based on childhood games. So this aspect of cultural memory, it is very highlighted, for example, in this super hit success that we have now. So that's, I think it's something interesting for us to think, how actually the stories that are trying to reflect the future, they actually come from elements from the past.
And a last brief question, because we are running a bit behind, but we were talking about future in general, and how transmedia and productions help to redefine or rethink the next scenarios. I would like to ask you about the future of the industry, not the futures that the productions conceive, but how do you forecast the next years of transmedia? Have you had the chance to study or observe some tendencies on that? Where do you think that the industry goes in the next years?
So absolutely. So what I think, and every year I am more certain about that, is that transmedia storytelling is a reality, already a reality, and will just increase more and more for many reasons, including the fact that we are having more different technologies being explored, and in terms of media platforms, so more and more media platforms being created and developed. So that's exactly the perfect terrain for transmedia storytelling to grow. And in terms of technological developments, I think that we are already seeing it now, but we will see more. So the artificial intelligence, the virtual reality, the augmented reality, so all these elements being more and more incorporated into transmedia stories, and more being part of our everyday lives. So now these past weeks we are seeing many news about Facebook, Google, Apple, etc., investing and studying and developing the metaverse, no? So the word of the moment, no? So actually thinking about the future of the internet itself, and this metaverse now will actually be integration of virtual realities, augmented realities, and the reality itself. So it will just expand all these aspects. So I see more and more opportunities for transmedia storytelling. But also I think that what we are going to see for the future is that we will not name it transmedia storytelling anymore, because it will be just the way things are. So we will not use the term, maybe we will be not discussing what is the definition of transmedia storytelling, what's the difference between cross-media, transmedia, multimedia, things that we are still doing nowadays. But in the future, I think it will be just the way things are.
Well, thank you very much. It made me think of a small story, small tale explained by David Foster Wallace, saying that two fishes run into each other, and one of the fishes asks to the other, "Hi, how's the water?" And the other one says, "What's the water?" So it's more or less
Exactly.
that. It's going to be so natural that probably the label makes no sense.
So it's lovely, this example of the water, because not the fish is immersed so much so in the water, no, that can even not notice it. So that's exactly what I think, that we will be so immersed into transmedia storytelling of so many sorts that we will not think about it anymore. We will just live in it.
So living in it, we leave this conversation. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we hope to continue talking about all these fascinating subjects. Thank you.
Thank you very much.